Welcome back to the Unpro Show. I am Rob. I am here with Theo today. Theo, welcome on for our NFC preview.
Happy to be here.
Yes, sir. So I guess let's just kind of get right into this. But before that, are you unpro? Are you somebody with creative energy, but you don't have a place to properly channel it? Do you have creative content ideas, but you don't have the skills necessary to create them? Are you trying to stand out in an industry that is overcrowded or nearly impossible to stand out in? Do you want to be on this show or a show just like it? Tell us about it. Link in bio. Are you unpro? No credentials needed. All right, so this format's going to be very similar to our AFC preview. If you didn't watch that, watch the one right after this if you have any interest in the NFL and the AFC. But we're going to be going through each team, each division, and picking an over or under on their win total for each and every team. These are from DraftKings Sportsbook, as accurate as of August 24th, which is today, the day we are recording. Any thoughts before we get into this, Theo?
No, man, just excited to have football back. Just excited to have free agency and the draft out of the way, so you could kind of start projecting what's going on. And like you said, August 24th, so we're 2 weeks out from everything getting started. It's an exciting time.
A very exciting time. Yeah, I think most of the training camps have officially wrapped up, so we're going through cuts, we're getting rosters down, and we're getting fully into this. Which I think this might be the best time of the year because there's not quite football. You're just thinking and excited about football. Maybe next week it'll be a little bit better.
Yeah, I got you. Life is just better with football in it.
100%. All right, so let's just get right into this. We're going to start with the NFC West. And if you're going to start in the NFC West, I think you have to talk about last season's NFC champion. I mean, they were as close as you get. They had Mahomes in OT. I mean, you were as close as you could possibly get to get in that first ring for Kyle Shanahan. Their over-under is 11.5 wins. What are your early thoughts on the 49ers going into this season? What are your expectations for them? What are their expectations?
Well, I think the 49ers expectations, it begins and ends with the Super Bowl, whether that's another match against the Chiefs or not. If it's a different team that steps up in the AFC, the expectation is to win a world championship. Like, we're not going to be the first sports program here to talk about how loaded the Niners roster is. Like,
yeah, 100%. Yeah,
it's insane. So they did have a lot of success last year, but I think that they have done enough to stay relevant and stay at the top of the pile. At the time of recording, we don't know what's going on with Brandon Ayuk. I know that the Niners
still know. If I had to guess, he resigns, but I mean that's just speculative, just based off the fact that he hasn't been traded yet. So that's my guess, but I guess there's no way to know because we're not him.
No, I mean they reopened negotiations. I know that they weren't like stoked about getting a long-term deal done, but as soon as Cleveland and New England and Pittsburgh started coming out of the woodwork, it seems like San Francisco's trying to get another good effort towards re-signing Ayuk. If he does leave, that's going to open the door for Ricky Pearsall to take over targets. I wasn't a huge fan of Pearsall coming out of Florida, but I think the fact that he's going to the 49ers and he has all of that stuff around him, he's in a really great position to be successful. Obviously, if you're with the reigning NFC champions, that's brilliant. But
like to me, what he would have to do, because what Ayuk I think thrives on is catching the ball in the middle of the field. Him and Debo catching the ball in between the numbers. It's where they both just thrive. So he's got to be able to continue to do that because that's the 49ers passing game. And I think that's one of his strengths, but it's just putting a lot of pressure on a rookie, like kind of similar to what the Bills are doing, could be a lot. It's not the same pressure that's on Keon Coleman, but it would be a lot if Ayuk has to leave. And you just don't want to lose a piece like that because your team is complete as of right now. You don't want to lose any pieces if you're the Niners. So they just have to do everything possible to keep together, in my mind, for just this year. When I was thinking about the Niners, to me, it was all about health. They were, in my mind, extraordinarily healthy last year. Other than Tufanga, they really didn't lose any top-end talent. Trent Williams was out for a little bit, but he was there in the playoffs, and they need that luck again in order to get back to that spot that they were like legitimately a stop away from winning the Super Bowl, from knowing what to do in the coin toss and overtime, from winning the Super Bowl, which is just, like I said, as close as you can get. But like I was also thinking, this team is officially old. Like Kittle's old, CMC is old for running back at this point. Debo is getting older. Like all of these playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, Trent Williams, one of the oldest players at this point in the NFL. I mean, he's still a really, really good tackle, but he's not a young man's tackle at this point. So I guess how much longer is this window open for the Niners? If they don't get it done this year, what happens?
I don't know what happens if they don't get it done this year, and I do agree with you that nobody out here is getting any younger, but I do think that where they are and who they have and where everybody's still at, I do think that they have the tools necessary to repeat what they did last year, maybe not necessarily in the playoffs, depending on the situation, but as far as the regular season goes, the Niners are going to be a hard team to beat. They're the team everybody's looking at in the NFC, and I think that's going to continue.
So I have a question for you. So I'm looking at the PFF preseason rankings of offensive lines. And if you had to rank the San Francisco 49ers offensive line in the NFL, what would it be?
Well, we talked about Trent Williams. I'm not sure off the top of my head who else they have on that offensive line. I would maybe say middle of the pack, like 15.
They are ranked 24th. 24th going into the season. That is not, I think, what anybody would have projected, or at least what you wouldn't think of if you weren't thinking about offensive line. You think the Niners, they have Trent Williams, that's a good offensive line, but there's not a lot of pieces next to Trent. So I guess for me, that's a big, big piece for this Niners team is, are they going to be able to keep running the ball at the rate they did last year? I mean, McCaffrey was generational last year. He had one of the best seasons that running backs had, in my opinion. So does that continue? I don't necessarily know. Looking at the 11.5 wins, I'm still going to go over. I mean, if this team stays healthy, they're going to win 12, 13 games, in my opinion. That's the goal. That's what they're trying to do. I mean, like I said, it's all the chips are in this year for the Niners.
Yeah, I'm going to second you on that over there. This team is just too good to bet against, and you might talk about how they don't have the superstar offensive lineman, and I don't know the transactions they made as far as that goes this year, but if it's the same as last year, then it's the same as last year, and they're hosting playoff games. So I can't be mad at the Niners. I got to give them the over. They repeat the same success that they had last year in the regular season.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Never mind. So just moving on now to another team in the NFC West. We're talking about the Rams. The Rams were a playoff team last year, and they are currently sitting at over under 8.5 wins. So basically, are the Rams a 500 football team is what Vegas is thinking in this year. And I think that's a pretty good spot for them to be, because the Rams could be really, really good. I could also see the Rams kind of bottoming out this year and not being the same team they were last year. So to me, obviously going in, like, probably the biggest loss any team had is Aaron Donald's just not going to play football anymore. And that's, like, I think the biggest question mark to me going into the season is, what does this defensive front look like? What does just the defense look like without Donald and Raheem Morris for this Rams team?
Yeah, I'm definitely with you. I mean, Aaron Donald is an all-time player. Yeah. Could talk about maybe best interior defensive lineman of all time. He's definitely in that conversation. Yeah. I'm happy that you brought up the defensive front, because the Los Angeles Rams in the draft this year, they double dipped on the defensive line with two Seminoles, picking up Jared Verse and Braden Fisk. Yeah. And I'm not going out here and saying that these guys are going to be Aaron Donald or anything close, but they clearly recognized what they lost, and they put resources into rebuilding that spot. And everybody talks about Jared Verse. He's just a freak and exactly what you want in a outside rusher perspective. But Braden Fisk was my breakout star of the combine. He came and took everybody by storm. I thought he benefited from playing next to Verse, obviously, but I just thought he was the thick white boy who kind of just benefited from that. But when he worked out at the combine, it was very clear that he was about it too. So the fact that they got those guys still playing together, it's encouraging to see for that defense that, other than Aaron Donald, didn't have a ton of big name power. Yeah,
not necessarily. So what would success have to look like for those two rookies for them to be at a base level for the Rams to be a successful team? What kind of sack numbers they have to put up, maybe a tackle for loss number combined? Because, like I said, you can't replace Aaron Donald, but you can bring in multiple bodies to try.
We're going to say combined between the two of them.
Yeah.
It's hard to say for interior defensive linemen because they just don't stuff the stat sheet like the outside rushers do. If I had to pick a number, I think if you got 14 sacks out of these guys combined,
That,
and
that would
then
be impressive. Yeah.
it would be very impressive. But I think Verse really is that guy, and I expect him to take over pretty quickly.
Mhm.
And then Braden Fisk on the inside holding up that run. I could see this being a good team there in LA.
Okay. That's so a good team in LA. I'm going to switch to the other side of the ball. So offensively, they had a lot of success last year. More success, I think, than a lot of people thought they would. And they didn't really change a lot of what their offense is. They're bringing up a lot of the same pieces back. The difference is now everybody knows your name. Everybody knows Puka. Everybody knows Kyron Williams. So does this offense take a step back just because teams are going to be more prepared for what they're throwing at them? Or is it McVay's a good coach? Nothing's really changing. It's what the Rams are. It's what he does.
Yeah, I think if you're counting on stopping the Rams offense to beat them, you're not going to have a good day, right? Cooper Kupp is one of the top receivers in football still for me. Puka Nacua with his breakout year, and then Matthew Stafford is probably one of the most underappreciated quarterbacks in the history of the league. He just keeps doing it despite disrespect and doubts and all that. So I'm still riding with the Rams. I feel confident about what they have going on, and yeah, I don't know what success looks like for them this year, because to say it's a Super Bowl team with the questions on defense is tough.
Yeah.
But could I see them making playoffs again, maybe as a wild card team under the Niners?
Yeah.
I'm rocking with that.
You're rocking with that.
Yeah.
But the one piece I'll have is I don't think Kyron Williams will repeat the success he had last year. I mean, he was way better than anyone would have thought. But I think Blake Corum might kind of step into a role if Kyron gets hurt, or maybe he's not at the same level he was last year. I have high hopes for that man. I think that he only has a couple of years in the NFL just because he took so many carries in college. But if he's able to just right away step into a role like on the Rams, I mean, it's probably one of the best running back teams you could be on. I think he could have a lot of success early. Like I said, if something happens to Kyron or he's just not at the same level. So the 8.5 wins, Theo. Where are you sitting on the 8.5?
I'm going to go ahead and pick the over on 8.5 wins. I think the Rams are going to have enough to win games. I think they're a fringe playoff team, maybe a sneaky contender, but I have confidence in this Rams team.
Yeah, I think for me, it just kind of comes down to McVay. He's a good coach. He's proven that for a very long time at this point. I mean, people keep taking his coordinators. There's a reason people take his coordinators is because he knows what he's doing. So I don't think they're going to be a very good team, but I think they're going to sit around 9 wins. So I'm going to take the over. 10 would be a very successful season in my mind for the Rams, pretty similar to what they did last year.
Agreed.
Moving on to a team that is very, very new with Mike Macdonald, all new coaching staff, all new everything for the Seahawks. No more Pete Carroll in Seattle. So they're sitting at 7.5 wins. So personally, I really like Macdonald. I think he was probably one of the best coaching hires that there was in this cycle. I think he was a great DC, and pairing him with Witherspoon, I think is going to be a fantastic combo right away. Like, I think legitimately Witherspoon could be a top 5 corner by the end of the year. Like, you're going to be like talking about him about the elite corners in the NFL. Just with that marriage to me, it's going to be fantastic. But the offense to me is weird. So what are you looking at for this Seahawks team this year? Do you agree with me that the offense is kind of weird? And what are your expectations for Macdonald in year one?
So I agree with you that Macdonald is at this point the youngest coach in the league, and coming in with the defensive pedigree that he has, I'm looking for Seattle maybe to get back to their ways of old and having the solid defense and the complementary offense. To me, this new look Seahawks team starts with a defensive line and their top pick, Byron Murphy. This guy, he was comped to Aaron Donald because of his size and explosiveness, which again, we're not calling these guys Aaron Donald, but in terms of body type and playing ability and what his strengths and weaknesses were at Texas, there's a lot of commonalities.
Yeah. Like, to me, it's just the explosion. Like, he's just for his size, he's so explosive. That's what Aaron Donald was. Like, that doesn't really come at this size a lot. And I think that was a Macdonald pick through and through. He knew that this was a big piece of starting a defense, of building a defense. But yeah, to me, that was a very exciting pick for what the Seahawks are doing.
So now he's going to be teaming up with I think a really, really great veteran on that defensive line in Leonard Williams. And I think that's going to be a fantastic guy for Murphy to learn under. And if he's going to take the next step forward at the next level, he's going to need an established pro like Mo Williams to really help him out and show him the way. So
Mhm.
I feel good about this Seahawks team. I can't think of who's running the ball in Seattle right now. Is it
Uh,
Charbonnet still? Is he the starter?
it's Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker. They kind of split
Okay.
last year. I think Kenneth Walker's still there as far as I know. I
Yeah.
think it might be more of a split. Last year was a lot of Kenneth Walker. This is year two of Charbonnet, so probably a little bit more touches for him. Uh, I mean, for me, the offense is kind of a big question mark. I don't necessarily know how good they are, and their big thing is the O line. Looking at the PFF rankings, they are the 31st ranked offensive line.
Mm,
I mean, they're below the Giants, which I mean, that's just sad. If you're below
that's
the
a bad
Giants'
look.
offensive line,
Yeah.
so that's the big question mark to me is because normally a Seahawks team is built on running the ball. That was more of a Pete Carroll thing, I think, than anything. But if this team can't run the ball, they're gonna have to go into Geno, hey, just take over with a bunch of quick passes to our receivers. That might not be a bad offense. They've got very good receivers, but if this offensive line can't hold up, it's to me it can go south pretty quick for this offense where it might be a bottom 10 unit come the end of the year. I like Geno. Geno to me is at best an average quarterback, but I think that's what everyone expects out of Geno.
Yeah, I'm with you. He really has had a nice career resurgence in Seattle. It's been
Mm-hmm.
really good to see from a guy who's been bounced around the league a lot. Uh, the Seahawks were a 9-win team last year,
Mm-hmm.
and if their line was about that, like 8.5, 9.5, I might lean under. But I
Mm-hmm.
think you just said it was set 7.5, so
Yes.
7.5 is a little low for me. I love the Seahawks and their culture. Maybe it's a little bit of bias, but I would lean the over there for the Seahawks to get over 7.5 wins.
Seahawks over 7.5. I think I'm going to go under on the 7.5 wins, and I think it's going to be 7. And I think it's going to a little bit be because of this offense and the offensive line. Basically, if they don't put points up, it's going to be a lot of pressure on this defense to play well. And it's a lot of young pieces on this defense. So basically, like, what are they going to do? I don't necessarily know. Um, in my mind, they might move on from Geno after this year, maybe just do a hard reset on offense. Um, I guess we'll see. I guess I'm just not buying McDonald doing the right things offensively to compete in the NFC West because there's going to be teams in this division that can put up points. And their counters defense, which isn't a bad counter, but you also got to counter offensively, at least in the NFC West, in my mind.
Yeah, definitely. And the fact that he's a defensive coach, like there's always going to be offensive questions. And I
Mm-hmm.
think 7, 8 wins is a really good spot for this team. If I had to go on either side of that, I would probably pick the 8 wins rather than seven
Yeah.
wins. But I
Yeah.
agree. Right there sounds good for
Yeah.
Seattle.
So shout out DraftKings. I guess they're pretty good at making lines
Indeed.
before the season starts. All right. So going on to the team, I think this team might be one of the most polarizing teams in the NFL, and that is the Arizona Cardinals, sitting at 6.5 wins. Is that they're over under? They really didn't do anything last year. They won 4 games last year. Kyler was hurt for half the season, came back, won a couple of games. But they added probably, in my mind, one of the coolest players in the draft, MHJ. I mean, I'm so excited for that, man. So this offense, I'm buying into. The defense, no one would be buying into because it's probably one of the worst units in the whole league. So what are your early thoughts here on the Cardinals? I have some, but I'll go ahead and let you go first.
Yeah, sure. I've been very complimentary so far in our episode here, but this is the time where I'm gonna take the gloves off a little bit. I'm pretty much out on the Cardinals, and
Oh, wow.
I'm all but out on Kyler Murray. I think he's unique, but unique does not mean good.
Okay.
And I don't I don't see him being able to succeed in the long term. I think Marvin Harrison Jr., while he is an intriguing prospect, he doesn't seem to me like what's going to take the Cardinals to that next level. The defense, I mean, I know very little about the defense except for
Yeah.
Buda Baker there. Uh, yeah, I don't see this team having any kind of realistic success this year. Uh, do they move on from Kyler Murray? Do they trade Kyler Murray? I don't
No.
know what that looks like for he's obviously gonna get suitors, like guys are gonna line up for Kyler Murray,
Oh,
but
yeah.
he's the answer. I don't know at this point. I'm not loving the Cardinals.
I'm going to be honest with you. I'm kind of high in the Cardinals. I think Kyler at the end of this season might be the best quarterback in the NFC West. I think that's his ceiling. I think that's how good he could be. I think there's a 100% chance that that's true. I 100% believe it. Because Kyler just needs a guy to throw the ball to when things break down, and that's what MHJ is. Because Kyler's just known for making weird things happen. You said he's a unique player. I mean, when like a lot of things I've read is he's looked the best he's ever looked going into the season. He's fully
Yeah,
healthy.
you know who else I read that about? Every other player in every training camp for the past decade. Everyone, every player has their best training camp, is healthy.
I'm
So
just buying in though. But to me, I'm just buying in because Kyler at some point was in the MVP conversation. He was that good of a quarterback. Like the Cardinals were a very relevant team in the NFC West. He had DeAndre Hopkins, and that was when he was at his peak. And in my mind, if MHJ, I'm not gonna say he's gonna be DeAndre Hopkins, but if he can fit a similar role and just be the safety blanket that Kyler needs, they have Trey McBride. I think that they're gonna be able to run the ball a little bit. They are bringing back James Conner. What it's Trey Benson over there's the rookie running back that they got. So they're investing into pieces for Kyler. So I'm buying into this offense. The defense is going to be bad at best, probably. I mean, it's probably going to be a bottom 20 unit, but for some reason I'm bought in. If you want to put up or shut up here, I don't know what I think about the wins over under, but something with Kyler where like he combines runs and throws for a certain amount of yards or a certain amount of touchdowns. But yeah, like I said, I think it's mostly just I think Marvin might be fantastic. I think Marvin might put up, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase numbers right off the bat, 1,400 kind of yards, kind of looking like what Puka did last year. What like Puka set a bunch of records last year, so I wouldn't be surprised if they get broken in the same division with this Marvin guy.
perhaps, man. I don't feel that good about the Cardinals. They have a new head coach. Did they have a new head coach last year? I can't even
Yeah,
remember.
it was last year. It's Jonathan Gannon, I believe, is the guy's name. And he is an offensive guy. They were so bad last year, though, so it's hard to even know if he's a good coach or not because they didn't have anybody.
Yeah, bro. And this is coming from someone who watched the Cardinals smack their team last year. That was our worst loss of the year. So embarrassing. But yeah, no, I can't get behind the Cardinals. I think they're pretty solidly in last place in their division.
All right, that's fair enough. So I'm going to assume you're
Yeah,
going under.
I am going to go under.
I think I'm going to go over. I guess that we're just really high in the NFC West, just kind of in general.
What is
But
it?
they're a pretty
Six
good
six and a
division.
half,
Yeah.
right? 6.5 wins. I
Mhm.
might circle back to that one for put up or shut up. There's other teams I feel better about that I think we might disagree over, but that I would keep that one in mind.
Okay. All right. So moving just into wrapping up this division, who wins this division? I think we're gonna have the same pick. You can go first.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead with San Francisco
Uh,
winning this division. I think they're still very much they're the division favorites. I think it's going to be
yeah.
hard to beat them at home or on the road. They're the team to
Yeah.
watch out for in the NFC.
They're probably to me one of the most clear cut favorites to win a division in the entire league almost. So yeah, I'm on right with the Niners as well. All right. So there you go. That was the NFC West. Moving on to the NFC South. To me, a very intriguing division. Was wide open last year. Might be a little bit less wide open this year because of a couple of notable moves by one team. But let's start at the top with that specific team, the Atlanta Falcons. They're sitting at over under 9.5 wins. So Vegas is bought in on the movement and Kirk Cousins, I guess. So what are your early thoughts on the new Raheem Morris coaching staff, Kirk Cousins, and this revamped Atlanta Falcons?
Well, the Atlanta Falcons have had one of the most interesting off seasons that I think I could ever remember.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that they both brought in a $100 million quarterback from free agency and spent a first round pick
Yeah.
on a quarterback, it seems almost self-destructive is the right word. Like I don't know what the plan is there to bring in two guys who on paper realistically could start games for you. If
Mm-hmm.
you're at this point, if you're drafting a first round quarterback, you're expecting him to be able to play on day one. So everything I've seen since the Falcons have drafted Michael Penix has been fantastic. So there's that head scratching move of
Yeah.
bringing in a first round quarterback then, but I was really impressed with their other draft picks, Rukaroro and Brandon Dorless.
Mm-hmm.
If you couldn't tell, I'm a defensive line guy. So when I see big bodies come on the defensive line, I'm happy about that. Also, they recently just signed Matthew Judon and Justin Simmons. So all of a sudden, this defense is looking really, really strong in Atlanta.
Yeah.
So I everything I've seen since the quarterback moves, I've been a big fan of, but I think they might have shot themselves in the foot this year because of those quarterback moves, especially because of the players that were still on the board when
Yeah,
they took
there was some pretty like because what the Seahawks picked right after him, so they could have had Byron Murphy. I believe that's
Yeah,
correct. Which that would have been pretty
some
cool. That would have been a pretty cool fit in my mind, especially with Raheem Morris. But I mean, basically, what they justified it as saying, we're not going to be in this spot again to pick a top 10 quarterback. So basically, it just comes down to that. You guys better not be in a spot to pick a top 10 quarterback anytime soon. Like you wouldn't, you went ahead and said that, like legitimately, what we just talked about, put up or shut up. Like legitimately, you cannot be in that spot in my mind for the next 3 to 4 years. Like you have to roll this whole thing out with Kirk, and then Penix has to be good. And if both those things happen, then we're all going to look dumb. We're going to be like, oh, the Falcons are geniuses. You guys are so smart. But I don't remember that ever being the case ever. I don't remember anyone ever complimenting the Falcons on being smart. But hey, I guess we'll see. Defensively, I think that it wasn't a strength of theirs last year, but it wasn't a weakness necessarily either. And I think that they took a couple of big steps and they brought in Raheem Morris. I think they're going to be a very plus defensive unit this year. So just before I go to the offense, I have a question for you on defense. Does Grady Jarrett can go back to an all-pro level with Raheem Morris as the middle of that defense? Does he get that good, or is he past his prime? It doesn't really matter anymore. What are your thoughts on, I guess, specifically Grady Jarrett?
I'm a big fan of Grady Jarrett. I think he is one of the least talked about guys out there. And I mean, interior defensive lineman, you're going to see that all the time. But
it's true.
Grady Jarrett has been that gold standard for so long, and I do think that they brought in enough pieces to be around him where he's going to see more single team pass blocking than he has in these past few years. So I'm a fan of Grady Jarrett. I think he's going to step it up for sure.
Cool. Yeah, that was kind of my thought too. I think just what Raheem Morris has done in the past with Aaron Donald, it's not like he's going to ever be at that level, but he knows that he is a player that's a really, really high caliber player in the middle of his defense. Like you can build it from that interior part out. I think that's how it's going to be built, at least for this year in Atlanta. But switching over to the offensive side of the ball, that's where a lot of the changes were. That's where a lot of things happened in my mind. First off, I think Bijan's going to be a monster. Notoriously, McVay running backs do well. This is the McVay coaching tree. I think Bijan's going to be a beast this year. He's going to be put into so many great spots. They're not just going to lean on Tyler Algier for no reason. Cordell Patterson followed Arthur Smith to Pittsburgh. He's gone. You don't got to worry about that anymore. So to me, really, really big expectations and things for Bijan. But my big question comes with the wide receiver too. London is, in my mind, going to be awesome. Put up 900 yards with nobody last year at quarterback. Legitimately Taylor Heineke. But who's wide receiver two? Is it Kyle Pitts? Is Kyle Pitts a tight end? Is he a receiver? I mean, they use him as an X receiver outside. They use him as a tight end. What is Kyle Pitts? Is he the number two receiver? If not, who is?
Yeah, I think you put it well that he on paper he's a tight end, but he's used a lot as a receiver. I think that's where his game is. He's not really known as like the inline blocker Jason Witten type. Like he's very the vertical threat, the guy you're chucking the ball to down the middle. I do think very easily he's the number two receiving option. As far as the number two receiver at the wide receiver position, I think that's anybody's spot to take over.
Yeah. Well, to me, it's probably Darnell Mooney then. I mean, they gave him a bunch of money to come in and do that. But it was just basically like, I'm just confused about what Pitts is because he hasn't really done anything yet that we can say that, oh, yeah, he was justified for being picked this high. No, he's a difference maker. He's not been a difference maker. Maybe Kirk will change that, but I feel like they have to come up with a real plan. Like he's not Kelsey. He's not Andrews. He's different than those guys. Like, what do you model him after? Is there a tight end that you've seen before that you would like maybe say, this is the blueprint for how to use Kyle Pitts? Because I feel like we haven't seen it before. Like I was racking my brain. I was like, I don't know what to do about this guy because he's, too clunky to be a receiver and too like quick to be a tight end, if that's a thing.
I think you touched on it really well right there in that Kirk Cousins is going to be by far the best quarterback he's ever played with. So if he has a chance to take that next level and justify being that high draft pick he was, it's going to be this year with the new all-star veteran quarterback. As far as a tight end comp for you, I don't really
Yeah,
know that I have one
I know.
just
I don't really
because
have one either.
he's not built the same. I mean, he plays the same position as other guys and as the guys you were just talking about, but to
Hmm.
say he's like Travis Kelce is in terms
He's
of
just
playing
not.
style.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I would think maybe
The
I
only
would
one I came up with that was close was Vernon Davis because Vernon Davis was very fast, and it was a lot of corner routes for Vernon Davis. That was a lot of the ways he got used in San Francisco. That was the close thing I come up with, but I don't really know anybody else that was like that.
I could see Vernon Davis. That makes sense. I think Vernon Davis might be a little bigger than Kyle
Mm.
Pitts is. I
I
don't know
think
off the
Kyle Pitts
top of
is
my head.
huge.
Racking my brain here, I thought of Evan Ingram because Evan
Okay,
Ingram
yeah.
definitely has the measurables to match someone like Kyle Pitts. I think he's probably a little smaller than Pitts is even, but
Mm.
I think that's the best comp I can come up with as I'm sitting here.
Oh, yeah, that's not bad. Just a better, faster Evan Ingram.
Yeah,
That's not a bad tight end to have. It's just I don't know if that's worth the draft capital they invested in. So they're sitting
oh
at nine
goodness
and a
no.
half. I think it's going to go over, mostly just because of the state of the division. In my mind, I think they kind of separated themselves a little bit. So I think they're probably a 10-win team, and a 10-win team wins the division in my mind, or at least makes the playoffs in my mind in the NFC South.
I'm also going to lean the over here. I don't see a division title coming to Atlanta just because of the how good all the other teams are. And I
Okay,
am saying all of the other teams.
all right,
But
all right.
we'll get to that.
All of the other teams. That's it. So I
All
guess
of
let's
them.
talk into, in my mind, the biggest threat to the Falcons is at this point the Buccaneers. They're sitting at over under 7.5 wins. Um, Baker looked good last year. Baker looked good for the first time since what, like his early days with Cleveland. I mean, it's been a while since Baker looked good. And I think a lot of that though was Dave Canales. Dave Canales is now gone. He is in the division, a head coach for the Panthers. So basically, when you take him out, last year was one of the worst run games in the entire NFL, like almost like league history. It was historically bad. And you take your OC out and you're bad at running the ball. Is this offense going to be good this year?
I appreciate that the Buccaneers invested in the offensive line with their
Mm-hmm.
top draft pick just because of just what you said there. You got to be able to run the ball in today's
Yeah.
NFL, even with the passing and the heralded quarterbacks and all that. If you're not running the ball, you're just simply not going to have long-term success.
Yeah.
Uh, Offensive line is not the splashiest move to make in the offseason. So
No.
I would have questions about how much better the Buccaneers got. I think they're still a good football team. They still have a lot
Mm-hmm.
of solid players. Like Mike Evans is probably a Hall of Famer at
I
this
mean, yeah,
point. Like
just the captain of consistency, Mike Evans.
yeah, so the Bucks are a very good football team. Definitely a contender for winning the division and messing up somebody's day in the playoffs for
Yeah.
sure.
Because basically everyone on defense they brought back. I mean, I guess Winfield, he's still, I mean, if he's not the best safety in the league, he's one of the best safeties in the league. Their big loss was Devin White's gone. I mean, that was, in my mind, a big reason of how they were able to put pressure on quarterbacks because they just blitzed him constantly. But really, in my mind, it's almost the same team. It's almost the exact same team. I They drafted Bucky Irving, and I thought that's such a weird move because he's not a running back. He's a pass catching back. And you need to be able to run the ball. I don't really know why they did that necessarily. To me, that was kind of a head scratcher because there's so many running backs that you can pick that can run in between the tackles or at least run the ball effectively. And I don't know if Bucky's necessarily that guy. I mean, he's not that different than the running backs they already have. So they're sitting 7.5 wins. I'm really not buying that they're going to be better. So I'm going to go under. I think there'll be around 6 or 7 wins in my mind.
I think they're going to go over. I have the over
Mm-hmm.
on these guys. They definitely didn't improve as much as you would like to see a true contender improve, but the pieces they still have in Tampa Bay, I think they're too good to go under 7 wins.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. I guess for me, it comes down to kind of the bottom half of this division as to why. But so just moving into the Saints, they're also 7.5 wins. My thoughts when I was just looking at this team was just, what about this team would make anybody excited? It's just the most boring team. They don't have a direction. I mean, it's Derek Carr, an old defense, and probably one of the worst O-lines in the league. I think it might be the worst O-line in the league, actually. Yeah, the New Orleans Saints are the number 32nd ranked offensive line, according to PFF. So what about this team would make you excited? Are there any reasons to have any faith that the Saints are going to be good? I mean, Dennis Allen has not proven he's a good coach. Like, what about this team is good?
I think the Saints are good enough to compete with the division. I don't think we're blown away by the Bucks or the Falcons from our conversation. So
Yeah.
I think the Saints still have enough ability and playmakers to contend in the division. Uh, Cameron Jordan is a huge player over there. Demario Davis is one of the best
Yeah. I
linebackers in
guess
the league.
those guys are old now, though. Those guys are officially old.
Yeah, they're
Like,
officially old, but they're still balling at the
I
most
think
elite
Cam Jordan
level.
was kind of just average last year. Demario Davis, I don't even know how he's doing. I think he's like 35 and he's still doing it. I think Cam Jordan took a step back last year. And he's moving to the interior now. He's not going to be an edge rusher anymore. He's going to be an interior rusher. I think that just kind of shows how they view him, what his age is at. I think it bottoms out bad for the Saints. If I was going to take maybe 5.5 wins, I might go under. That's how bad I think it's going to be for the Saints this year. You can't have Derek Carr and no offensive line and expect to get yards. That's not going to work. I mean, their running backs are Alvin Kamara. I mean, it's not. Drew Brees is gone. Let's just move on. It's the same team that Drew Brees had, and Drew Brees has been gone for a long time. So I don't know. I'm not buying the Saints well under the 7.5 in my mind.
So I know I just said with the Buccaneers that drafting offensive line or signing big offensive linemen is not going to be splashy or fancy. I do have to say that the Saints picked up my favorite tackle in the draft, who is Talise Fuaga, and how much one guy is going to reinvent the run game and the pass blocking over there. It's hard to say, but I
Mm-hmm.
do like the tackles that they have in the Saints. I think they have a great culture. They might not have the youngest, freshest team, and Derek
Yeah.
Carr has all kinds of question marks around him. I
Mm-hmm.
am going to take the over with the Saints, though.
Wow. What?
I think
What?
that's a good team. I don't know if they're like if we're just talking regular season, so I'm happy
Yeah.
with that. I'm
Yeah.
not saying they're going to contend or even win the division necessarily, but when we look at Tampa Bay and we look at Atlanta, there's no clear front runner there. So I could see New Orleans and Tampa Bay having just about similar successes this year. I would put them on the same tier.
Put them on the same tier. Are you willing to put up or shut up this one? That kind of surprised me. I'm really low on the Saints.
What's their line at?
7.5.
I could see put up or shut up on this one. I
All
would
right.
feel comfortable betting on the Saints. I do think
All
as we
right.
go, there's going to be teams we disagree on stronger.
Well,
So
like I said, we can just keep doing it. We can just keep saying it over
sure,
and over again. Because I guess we kind of have like two so far. So we disagreed so far. I guess at the bottom of most of the divisions with the Cardinals and the Saints.
yeah,
I'm
that's right.
surprised that you are so high on this Saints team because, like I said, I think
I
they're
don't
gonna
know
have to
if
bottom out and just go for next year.
I don't know if so high is the way that
That's
I
I
would
guess that's
put
true.
it,
Yeah,
but
I
putting
guess
them,
over 7.5 isn't really high.
I'm as high on New Orleans as I am at Tampa Bay and Atlanta. That's
Okay.
where I sit right now.
All right. So moving on to the team that finished last in the entire NFL last year. And a lot of people blamed Bryce Young. I don't really think it was Bryce Young's fault. But they are sitting at the Panthers are sitting at 5.5 wins. So not very high expectations this year from Vegas for the Panthers. Just real quick, I think that every investment that they made this year was for Bryce because they are building the interior of the offensive line, not necessarily the tackles, because that's the way that Bryce works is he can kind of see over the middle. You know what I'm talking about? It's not like he needs all of this time necessarily. He can be quick, make quick decisions. The receivers are better. I think Deontay Johnson was a very underrated signing. I'm kind of high on this Panthers team. I'm curious what your thoughts are. I really like Dave Canales.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. This team's success is going to start and end with Bryce Young, whatever
Mm-hmm.
that looks like. So I think the fact that they invested so much in the pieces around him is going to be huge. I was a big fan of their rookie class,
Mm-hmm.
particularly Xavier Legette and
I
Jatavian
yes.
Sanders. Uh, Xavier Legette, for me, is going to be a guy I'm looking at in the late rounds of my fantasy drafts. I don't think anybody else is going to be on him, but he's basically going to walk in as the number one receiver. The targets are up for grabs in Carolina, so a guy like that getting all the attention. I'm also high on this Panthers team. I think part of it is also that I don't think it's possible that they can be worse.
Also, that's very true. And it was pretty bad there by the end of last year. Like, really, nobody was trying. Nobody cared. Bryce was getting demolished. He was getting sacked constantly. Like, everyone's like, oh, CJ Stroud's so great and Bryce Young's so bad. The situations were dramatically different. And I'm not saying that Bryce is better than CJ. CJ demonstrated that he's worthy of all of his praise. But yes, it was Bryce's fault. At the same time, it really wasn't in my mind. So Dave Canales is the architect that helped revive Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield's careers. I think he does the same thing with Bryce. It's not. It might not happen as quickly as it happened to those guys. Bryce doesn't have as much experience, and there's just less around him. But I'm high on this Panthers team, sitting at the 5.5. I think I'm going to go over. I think it's barely over, but if they go over this, that's a big win for the Panthers. If Bryce looks competent and they get 6 or 7 wins, things are pointing in the right direction. As a Panthers fan, I'm finally like, all right, let's go. Like, if you could just watch this team on offense and not just think it's the worst thing ever, that would be a win for Panthers fans.
Yeah, I'm absolutely with you. I'm also hitting the over. Everybody's going to talk about how CJ Stroud's better than Bryce Young, but Bryce Young's best receiver was a 33-year-old Adam Thielen, and he played well, but that's not the guy you want leading. Yeah, he's not the guy you want leading the charge. So I think another year of development, some more weapons around him, I think is going to equal out 6 wins for the Panthers. Sounds right.
Yeah,
I like it.
Cool. So division winners. If you say the Saints, I might lose my mind. But who's going to win this NFC South?
Well, get ready to lose your mind. I'm leaning the Saints, but like I said before, I think the Saints are neck and neck with Tampa Bay and Atlanta. So I think this is the closest division in the NFC. For me, there's no clear cut winner. I'm leaning the Saints. Maybe it's a bias, maybe it's not, but really Tampa Bay or the Saints, I could see taking this.
Okay. I agree that it's very wide open. I mean, it is the NFC South. It seems like it's been wide open for a long time. I'm going to go with the Falcons. It's probably the most normal pick, probably the most consistent pick that people will make. It basically comes down to, in my mind, with that, if Kirk proves that he's the best quarterback in this division and could still play at the level that Kirk's played to win the division, regular season Kirk Cousins is one of the best quarterbacks that there is. I mean, he's so consistent when he's at that level. So if he's able to do that with all those weapons, I think that they're going to thrive out there in Atlanta. 10 wins seems about right. It seems like whoever wins this division wins 10 games, and I think that they're the most likely to do it.
I'm with that. I wouldn't argue for or against the Saints endlessly, just because I think they're all pretty much on the same playing field. I could see the Panthers getting hot and being in contention at least as much as I could see either of these other 3 teams running away with it. So I think it's going to be a fun division to watch. Like I said, if the Panthers offense looks good, it'll be a very fun division to watch. I guess maybe minus the Saints, but we don't have to talk about the Saints anymore. All right, so moving on to the NFC North. And to me, I'm a Bears fan. This is my division. This is my home turf. I'm not going to start with the Bears, the Packers. I think it's going to start with the Lions. I mean, they were in the NFC Championship last year. They're sitting at over under 10.5 wins. They brought the band back together, best O-line in the entire NFL. But to me, what it comes down to is they're not the cute and lovable Lions anymore. There's a target on your back this year, Detroit. It's not the same. Like, it's not like, I'm kind of rooting for the Lions, especially not in the division. It's not that way. But like, I kind of find myself rooting for the Lions. I would rather the Lions win 3 games this year. That's like, they're a legitimate threat now, and they make teams nervous. And that's a different thing. It's not like you're going to catch teams off guard. You are one of the targets. If it's not the Niners, you might be the biggest target in the entire NFC. Yeah, I'm with that. The Lions definitely announced themselves last year. They brought back all of the key pieces. They're the equivalent of the 49ers in this division, and that they're the clear-cut favorite. They definitely have the targets on their back. My thing with Detroit this offseason that I really appreciated is that they revamped their secondary.
Yes, that was the problem last year. Yeah.
Yeah, so bringing in Terry and Arnold and Ennis Rakestraw Jr., those
Mhm.
are two guys who are going to get the opportunity to play from day one. And if those guys work out, you got to watch out for Detroit. I think they're going to be a problem for anyone.
Yeah, that and what they added Carlton Davis too, and I think Carlton Davis is an underrated, sneaky, really good corner. He played really well for Tampa. He came over. I think he's pretty much cornerback one over there now because they don't really have a lot of proven talent, at least in that secondary. But like I said, they noticed they. I guess they didn't notice they were able to fill their hole. This secondary was clearly the hole last year. If that holds up, that defensive line is excellent. And like I said, I think it's the best offensive line in the league. I don't really know who you could put ahead of them as of right now. It's just all five spots. They have guys. And I mean, they probably have the best offensive line in the league at this point in Penny Sewell. I mean, he's an animal. So Ben Johnson came back. He had a lot of head coaching offers. I think realistically after this year, he leaves. So I guess in my mind, this offense has to hit at a really, really high level because I don't know after this year if it's going to be the same. Because I think Ben's a big difference maker. What are your expectations for this offense? I mean, they got a lot of weapons. Just yeah, that's out of the ball.
I think the offense, like you said, they have a lot of ballers, and I think the goal is going to be to keep everybody healthy and share
Mm-hmm.
the rock a little bit, make sure everybody gets their touches. They
Mm-hmm.
had four guys score 10 touchdowns last year, and I think that's
That's
part of
incredible.
what
Yeah.
the appeal of the Lions is they can
Mm-hmm.
hit you a lot of places. I I think the Lions are going to be really good. I think double digit wins is uh not the floor. What is it? The baseline expectation.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Yeah.
this team is going to look to crush in the regular season, and they're going to try to make a really strong run in the playoffs. See if they could top what they did last year, which was super impressive. So I
Yeah.
am going to go over on the 10.5 wins for sure.
I'm going to agree with you on that 10 and a half. I think, it's also, I think the NFC North is playing some pretty bad divisions. Yeah, it's the AFC South, and I guess they had the NFC West. So it's not that bad, but they do get the AFC South. So like I said, high expectations for the Lions over on the 10 and a half, C12 maybe as the ceiling. 13 would be a crazy season to me for the Lions. That would mean everything's just hitting on really, really high levels. If they win 13 games, that might be the one seed, and that would be impressive. Uh, but moving into a team that made the playoffs last year and has, in my mind, really, really high expectations and a lot of hype behind them. And that is the Green Bay Packers at 9.5 wins. Got their playoff win last year against the Cowboys. Kind of thought that was a fluke. It was crazy that CeeDee Lamb just, I guess, was non-existent for that game. He just didn't really want to play in the playoffs, I guess. And I guess the Packers took advantage of it, so good for them. But I don't get the hype. I don't trust this team. Sell me on the Packers if you want to, I guess.
I hesitate to sell you on the Packers because I don't want to hurt your feelings. I'm I'm a fan of the Packers, as you just said. They showed up to Dallas, and even though Dallas they dropped the ball a lot and kind of made mistakes that shot themselves in the foot, the Packers played clean and they played for 60 minutes and they didn't make mistakes that swung momentum back to Dallas. I was really impressed with Jordan Love all of last year. I was impressed with his poise coming into Dallas for a playoff game. In front of those fans. It's not the easiest thing to do. I think the Packers have the most underrated defense in the whole league. They just continue to ball, have playmakers, and they don't
Mm-hmm.
really get a lot of respect. The Packers drafted my favorite defensive player in last year's draft, which is Edgerrin Cooper. I think if that guy gets featured in the Packers defense, he's going to be a problem because he could do pretty much everything that you want. He's a great blitzer. He can play the run really well. I'm really high on Edgerrin Cooper. I don't know if the Packers are going to be enough to beat the Lions long term
Mm-hmm.
or make any significant run in the playoffs, but they're a dark horse for me. I could definitely see the Packers starting some problems. They were very close to beating the Niners in the playoffs.
They
That was
they
a
actually were,
very
which
close
is
game.
yeah, which to me is kind of
That's
concerning that they are
very
that good. And I mean, like,
yes.
I'm not saying the Packers are trash. I'm not saying the Packers are this horrible team. I just don't like. I get that Jordan Love was good last year, but what percentage of that is we haven't seen Jordan Love before versus Jordan Love's a really good quarterback? I don't really know. It's like when I was watching him play, he was like imitating Rodgers, like his dropbacks, the way his arm angles work. Like he looks so similar to me, and it was driving me nuts because it's like he's not this guy. So does he start to make his own waves, or does he continue trying to copy somebody else? I don't necessarily know. There's nothing wrong with trying to copy Rodgers. He's a good quarterback. But that's not who he is. He's his own guy. So they don't really have a lot of receivers that I believe in. I mean, it didn't really matter so much last year, but I think that kind of matters to me long term. And with the success of this team is if Jordan Love's going to be good, who's going to get the ball? I mean, they spread it around pretty evenly last year, but does anybody really step up? I don't know. Like you said, underrated defense. The defense does scare me as a Bears fan, but I just don't know if I buy the offense necessarily for the Packers. And Jordan Love. That might just be me trying to like cover myself and not say the Packers are good. But I don't know. I don't buy it yet.
I think if you're going to copy anybody, copying Aaron Rodgers is a very good idea. And then also in the same vein as Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love, and I'm showing respect to Packers here, but still, Jordan Love is throwing to absolute no names that I've heard of Jaden Reed before the season, but
Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, and Christian Watson are, I think, they're top receivers last year.
There's Romeo Doubs in there as well. But it doesn't
make it better.
It's such an odd group, but if you have all these guys who are, there's no guys that should stand out as guys you want to double cover. So I guess it's situational, but the fact that he was able to do what he did with the supporting cast that he had, I mean, I think these guys maybe don't take the next step in like making a deep playoff run, but I think they're going to be a tough customer for sure, especially in the division that they're in.
Yeah, I guess I'll give one compliment to the Packers. I really like Tucker Kraft. He was kind of a project at tight end, but I mean that dude's just so big and fast. He could just do so many things. He's the one guy that I kind of like on the Packers. I think he was like North Dakota State or South Dakota State. Like he just kind of came out of nowhere. I think the ceiling on him is kind of high, but other than that, I'm not going to give any compliments out beyond that. Because I guess it's like, what is a successful season for the Packers? Because they exceeded everyone's expectations last year, and going beyond what they did last year would be a crazy jump. I mean, that's NFC Championship level jumps. So I don't know if that's really in the cards, and if it is, I mean, then I'm just going to be sad, I guess.
Yeah, I think the Packers are basically looking for this year what they did last year, and that stay relevant in the division, and then once the playoffs come, it all starts over again. So I like the Packers. I'm gonna give them the over here on their wins.
I'm gonna go under. I just don't want to take the over.
Sure. What's the tell me again?
It's 9.5.
Oh man, I would maybe put up or shut up on the Packers getting double-digit wins. That sounds intriguing to me.
I don't know. I don't know if I'm willing to do that. I don't know if so that means I have to shut up about it. I just have to shut up about the Packers the rest of the year. It feels like it's not what I want to do.
Good luck with that. That's okay. We can circle back again. It's all good.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. 9-7 is really, 9-8. 9-8's a pretty bad season for the Packers. Hopefully that happens. All right. So moving on to the Bears. The Bears are over under 9.5 wins as well. That seems, I guess everyone's buying into the Bears, which I get it.
Well, here's the thing with the Bears, right? The Bears brought in maybe not one of the most hyped rookies of all time, but they brought in a guy who they're expecting to be a difference maker for the franchise. Part of what the expectations for the Bears and everybody being high on the Bears, part of it is coming off of this one kid. So is he going to be that good, I think, is the question. But I think he comes from a really good program where he was one of the top performers at his position last year. So I think really all the success from the Bears this year is going to come down to their star rookie. And I think everybody's going to be talking about Torrey Taylor for years and years to come. Just an elite prospect, So
he is an elite prospect. I mean, there's no reason to not take a punter that high. I mean, he legitimately pins him in the 10 every time. Maybe that's what he did at Iowa. I think that was kind of one of our sneaky best draft picks. I think the Bears actually had a really good draft with the few amount of picks they had. I don't think they had a lot of misses. And you're saying that it all comes down to Caleb. And I'm going to kind of disagree with you.
Torrey Taylor.
It all comes down to Torrey Taylor. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
Go ahead. You were going to say.
But I think that this team is built significantly more beyond the quarterback. And it's the first time, I think, in a really long time that the Bears are built properly to bring a new quarterback in. It's, in my mind, you can start at the receivers. I'm going to start at the offensive line. I think it's last year was a middle of the road offensive line. They got better. Everybody's healthy this year. Darnell Wright, year two. I think he might be one of the better tackles in the league when it comes down to the end of the season this year. And the defense was very good at the end of last season. And it was because Eberflus took over. They got more names on defense. They got better on the defensive line. The secondary was a little bit older. Sneaky, I think Kyler Gordon's going to thrive in that nickel corner spot because it seems like he just likes to hit guys. And if you want to hit guys, go ahead and be a nickel corner. If that's what you want to do, please keep doing that. I think that this team's built structurally really, really well. I don't see a lot of holes on the depth chart. There's not a lot wrong with the Bears. Like, yes, it comes down to Caleb, but the team could hold its own without it if it really comes down to it. Caleb's the difference maker between an 8 or 9 win team and a 10 or 11 win team. And that's what a good quarterback should do, is take a good team and make them a very good team. And is he going to do that in his rookie year? I don't necessarily know. I'm obviously very excited and hopeful that he will. So they're sitting at 9.5 wins. I truly believe the Bears are a 10-win football team this year. And if they make the playoffs and win 10 games, that's as good as you could hope for as a Bears fan. If you get to play a playoff game with your rookie quarterback, we're on par with the Packers now. We're not losing steps behind. And that's what it's got to be this year.
Let me just say, so I don't hurt your feelings or anything, I'm high on the Bears. There's a lot. The Bears got significantly better, as you just said, from last year to this year. It's a different football team, different vibe around the facility, everything. I think 9 wins is the ceiling for these guys.
I think it's
going forward. I would be interested in seeing what they can do. I think long term, this team's in a much better place than they were at. But as far as this year, with Caleb Williams coming in as a rookie and them kind of, in a sense, putting the plane together as they're flying it, I think 9 wins would be a great season for the Bears. I think Bears fans would be fine seeing a winning season. Maybe you play a playoff game, maybe you just miss the playoffs, something like that. But I think the Bears have a bright future next season. So for that, I'm gonna take the under on the Bears.
You're gonna take the under. Just one more additional little prop thing here. I think that one of the most underrated things the Bears do is bring in Keenan Allen. Like, it's been talked about, but everyone's saying that he's the third receiver in Chicago. And yes, that's true. But third downs, I think Keenan's going to eat on third downs. And I think that Caleb's going to trust him. He's basically going to be like the Kelsey to Mahomes, obviously not on that level, but the safety blanket on third down. So if you could bet on someone to lead the NFC in third down catches, Keenan Allen, I think that's a sneaky bet if he's healthy all year. So that's one of the props I'm looking at. I think that's interesting. All right, moving on to the Vikings. And the Vikings, are like a year removed from winning just like 13 games out of nowhere. They're sitting at 6.5 wins. I'd say that's kind of a fall from grace a little bit. Not a lot of hope going into this year for the Vikings, at least from Vegas' side. JJ McCarthy's out for the year. Probably best thing long-term for the Vikings. Just let JJ sit and let's see if Sam Darnold's any good. It's might as well try. What are your thoughts around the Vikings? 6.5 seems like not a lot of faith, at least, being put into what the Vikings do this year.
I think between JJ McCarthy's season-ending injury and the tragedy involving Kyrie Jackson, I think the Vikings are in contention for the worst offseason of all time. I think it's been tough sledding. If I was a Vikings fan, I would be feeling very low. I do think Dallas Turner is a good pickup for them, especially because they lost Danielle Hunter there on the line. It's hard for me to say for the Vikings because I do think Justin Jefferson is a difference maker and probably one of the top receivers in the league, if not the top receiver in the league. And he balled last year with, garbage and Dick throwing him the ball. So I don't know how much there is a drop off. They won 7 games last year. I think that's pretty appropriate to expect of this Vikings team. If I had to lean in a direction, I'm going to have to say under, just because Sam Darnold has not proved a lot in everywhere that he went. So I think it's going to be tough for the Vikings to contend with in their division with all these other teams who got way better, as we talked
Yes.
about them.
Yeah.
The Vikings got maybe moderately better, maybe.
If anything, they might have actually gotten worse in my mind. I was just looking straight up at the running back room. Aaron Jones is 29 years old. That's the answer at running back. It was Alexander Madison last year. Like, you know what? Yeah, let's bring in Aaron Jones. Like this is going to
Well,
fix the problem that's going on there. Because in my mind, the Vikings are going to have to be a little bit of a running team at least early on when Sam still is getting used to this offense. And if they can't run the ball, it might go downhill fast. And if it goes downhill too fast, I might see Justin Jefferson requesting a trade during the season if it goes really, really bad. And he would want to go to a team that's good. I wouldn't blame Justin for wanting to do that. He's one of the best players in the league. And if you don't have anyone that can get to the ball, and if there's no reason to run routes, I kind of get it. So I'm going to go under as well. That's 6.5.
I do think Aaron Jones is better than Alexander Madison by a significant margin. And as far as Justin Jefferson goes, I think that comes down to how excited he is to play with JJ McCarthy. Is he willing to stick?
Yeah, it's true. You want to stay for JJ, and it's just like, I guess, like, what have you even seen? And he hasn't. I don't think he's had like how many passes do you think he's realistically caught from JJ up until this point in his life? I mean, it's not that much. He barely lasted through any of training camp. So I don't even know if he knows, and he might want to just go to an established veteran. So I could see, like I said, I could see that happening if things really go bad quick. All right, so who wins this NFC North?
I'm going to go with Detroit. I feel like they're pretty comfortable as the favorites there, but as I'm sure we'll circle back to later, I think you got to watch out for this Green Bay team.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to go with Detroit as well. Like I said, they got the target on their back. I think if anybody might want a target on their back, it might be Dan Campbell. So I think that they might thrive a little bit. Maybe not thrive, but I think they're going to be the class of this NFC North. They might end up being the class of the NFC. Is because, like I said, there's not a lot of holes in that team now because they kind of fixed up the secondary, but it's basically how do you deal with this target on your back now.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And moving into the division of divisions, the NFL's premier division, I would say. I think this is this is what it's probably the most amount of fans, I would say, are a fan of this division. And it was a doozy last year. I think it's going to be a doozy again this year. But let's start right at the I guess this wasn't the top because they had one of the worst collapses I think I remember in recent history. They were legitimately the best team in football, and then they were just irrelevant in a couple of weeks. It is the Eagles sitting at 10.5 wins, 2 fresh coordinators, Vic Fangio on defense, and your boy Kellen Moore there on offense. What are your thoughts on this Eagles team?
As a Cowboys fan, I'm sure you put up the graphic already, but as a Cowboys fan, I'm a really, really big fan of these Eagles. I think they do everything right. I think Howie Roseman is one of the great minds in football today. Mm-hmm. I think they have a lot of ballers. I think Nick Sirianni is one of the best coaches out there today.
Really?
And I'm also quite a big fan of Jalen Hurts. I think he's one of the bright young stars. I think if he hasn't taken off already, he has a lot of promise in his future. Mm-hmm. The Eagles for me, the one thing I've been able to keep coming back to and shitting on the Eagles for was their defensive backs.
Yeah.
If they had ballers in the defensive back room, they would get injured. So they've had a lot of tough luck over the years. And like the Lions, they also double dipped for defensive backs this year. They picked up Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean in the draft. Yeah. And I think that's a winning move for the Eagles. I don't know what happened last year when they, I think it was like 9 of their last 10 games they lost and didn't look all with it. But I have faith in the Eagles. I have faith in the players and the culture that they have over there. I would put the Eagles right up there with contending for the NFC against anybody else.
So I did a lot of research into what happened to the Eagles last year and why did they bottom out. And it was basically their offense just turned into, all right, Jalen, who's one-on-one, and then throw that guy the ball. And it was basically just, we had better dudes than you. And that worked for a year and a half. And then eventually teams adjusted to it, or maybe the Eagles just never changed. They never adjusted to anything else. And I think Kellen Moore is going to give them at least a modern offense that's not going to be predicated on, hey, AJ, beat your man. Like, that's not really going to be the case of the offense anymore. And if that happens, I think that the ceiling is very high for this Eagles team. To me, the biggest caveat comes to Jason Kelce's gone. So that means Jalen Hurts is in charge of pass protection. Can he do that? because it's a new offense and it's pass protection. It's a lot of things to learn in one offseason. Could he do it 100%? Could he excel 100%? But I guess you should have to mention that now this is going to fall on his plate because Jason Kelce is probably the best pass protecting center that there was because he literally controlled everything for that Eagles team, and it's not going to be the case anymore. I do really like Quinyon Mitchell. You mentioned him. I think that he might be one of the better corners in the league this year. Like, I'm not going to say he's going to be at Sauce level, but I think he's going to be the best corner in this draft, and he's going to get an opportunity to prove that with the Eagles. And I think he's got like the swagger to him that you need as an elite corner. Where as a Cowboys fan, I wouldn't be excited that the Eagles had Quinyon. I think he's going to be very good. And also, like you said, Howard Roseman, one of the best minds in football. They were an old team 2 years ago. This is not an old team anymore. They completely revamped that whole defense in like 2 years. So I guess shout out the Eagles for knowing how to really, really operate quickly and maintaining this window that I thought a lot of people thought would close and did not close. It's as open as it's ever been in my mind. So like I said, Eagles 10.5. I think I'm going to go over, like you said, the class of the NFC almost at this point. Just kind of impressed with the offseason. It comes down to the coaching and are they able to actually learn these new things? But I think it's an over.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to agree with you on the over, and I like that you touched on Jason Kelce because I think he was obviously a huge part of that team. But the Eagles have had the foresight about Kelce because he's been kind of one foot out the door already for a couple of years. The Eagles have had and have been grooming his replacement for the past couple of years in Cam Jurgens. So to call him Jason Kelce would be a lot of pressure on a young man. But I do appreciate that he's going to step in and not be clueless. He's been in the league for 2 years waiting for this to happen. So I have faith in the Eagles. I have faith in their process.
Yeah. No, like I said, you mentioned him. I've just been impressed with how they rebuilt this team so quickly. But yeah, moving on to a team that I don't think rebuilt quickly at all. I'm curious what your thoughts are on this team. Your Dallas Cowboys, 9.5 wins over under. I'm just going to let you take it because I legitimately am just curious what you think because this is a polarizing team.
Yeah, polarizing is the right word for it. As a Cowboys fan, seeing our season end last year the same way that basically every good season that the Cowboys have ever had since I've started really following football, and it's all the same. And then the owner, Jerry Jones, coming out and saying that this was an all-in offseason, that they were looking to contend and make the moves necessary to compete in the long term, not just in the division. I think it's all been kind of just a slap in the face, to put it kindly. I'm obviously still going to support the Cowboys, and I do think that they have good players and have a good team, but did they get better enough to contend in the long term? Really, like, absolutely not. That's all I can come back to. You can not sign free agents. Right? You can get away with not doing that every offseason. You can get away with not paying your best players the contracts that they want. You cannot do both of those things.
Yes.
You can't not bring in players and also not pay your best players. The trio that everybody's talking about is Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, and Micah Parsons. That's what everybody's on and talking about. As a fan of the team, I would be most interested in seeing them bring back CeeDee Lamb of those three. I just think he's the best. If it, like, minus Tyreek Hill and maybe Justin Jefferson, I would put CeeDee Lamb up there with any of those guys.
Yeah.
I think 9 or 10 wins for this Cowboys team is exactly what I'm expecting. To say that they can contend with the Eagles is a stretch, and to say that they'll contend with the Niners, the Lions, and then eventually, I mean, everybody's looking at the Chiefs here in February, right? So to say they're going to contend with those teams, it would be very, very, very surprising for me. So unfortunately, I have to lean on the under for my Dallas Cowboys.
Wow.
Yeah, I think 9-10 is right there for them. But if you had to guess of them underperforming or overperforming, CeeDee Lamb's still not in the building, right? So
Yeah.
It's going to be tough with Brandon Cooks as the number one. We've seen that before. It doesn't always go well. So yeah, my this is probably the worst Cowboys team I've seen fielded since I've started following football.
Wow.
And for the past couple years, I've had like in the back of my mind, like we got a team. This could be something. I do not have those feelings this year. I think there's a chance that Jerry Jones is sabotaging Dak and Mike McCarthy to make them look bad. So when they move on from them and bring in whoever else at the end of this season, it looks like the right move. That's how I feel with this offseason, that this might be the first tank I've seen out of the Dallas Cowboys, that they're tanking for. I don't know if it's Shador and Dion. I don't know if it's Bill Belichick and the slowest, fattest white quarterback in the draft. I don't know what that looks like, but I think this is a sabotage year.
I kind of agree with
Unfortunately.
you. I was just very curious to hear what your thoughts were because I know you're very realistic about the Cowboys, and I thought the Cowboys had maybe the worst offseason out of anybody. They didn't do
I don't know.
anything, and they were a team that was close last year.
Our quarterback
And
didn't blow out his knee, and we didn't have any of our rookies die. So I think I would probably still have to give it to the Vikings or the Falcons for previously mentioned reasons.
yeah, but obviously not a good offseason by any stretch of the imagination. The fact that you're saying
No,
Jerry might be purposely destroying it would be classic Jerry Jones thing to do, just to try to take control back. That's what Jerry wants. He wants control of these Cowboys. He wants credit for the Cowboys. That's what Jerry wants. That's what Jerry wakes up every single day. How can I take credit for a Cowboys Super Bowl? And I think the way might be by bottoming out. I mean, basically the elite top end talent's there, so Jerry can still sell jerseys. He's going to have to pay CD. I think that they're just trying to figure out basically how little money they can bring him back for and how few years they can bring him back for. And basically every depth piece that this Cowboys team had just left. They're just gone now. It's top end talent and then bottom end talent. There's not a lot of middle. And really good football teams are built on the middle. If you look at the Eagles, it's all in that middle tier, very good
yep.
players. The Cowboys don't have that anymore. In my mind, they kind of all went to the Commanders. They all followed Dan Quinn. It's like your whole defensive line pretty much just followed Dan Quinn. That wasn't Micah Parsons.
We'll get to that.
Yeah.
We'll get to that. Believe me.
So I guess just for one more thing on the Cowboys here, what does Dak or this offense have to do? And I guess include Mike McCarthy in this. What do they have to do to be back with the Cowboys next year? What's the minimum thing that they have to accomplish to get another crack at it?
For these guys to get another crack at it, they need to. I'm going to say that they're going to be a wild card team because I think Detroit, San Francisco, or Philadelphia will take that top spot. I think we're pretty comfortable on that. I think for these guys to get another shot, it's going to take 2 playoff wins. I think they're gonna have to get to a championship game of some kind because otherwise, then what's new?
Yeah,
like what's changed?
It's true.
Nothing.
That was kind of my exact thought. Like they have to be an NFC Championship team, and if you were going to guess right now, are they an NFC Championship team? I would lean no. So
No.
yeah, all right. So yeah, I was very curious to hear your thoughts on that. The Jerry sabotaging thing might be one of the best takes that I've heard.
I said before that Chicago. I'm more excited about Chicago than Dallas. I think they're both 9-10 win teams. The difference is if the Bears got 9 wins, the fans would be ecstatic. I think they'd be like, we got a guy, we're getting better. That's all we need. If Dallas got 9 wins, they're cutting everybody. Quarterback, head coach, they're gone. Right. So I think they have similar. I have similar expectations for both teams. That one of them is a contender and one of them is a young team trying to get their footing.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate just because I'm in Dallas now. I mean, the Cowboys run everything down here. I mean, it's like every billboard, it seems like, has some kind of Cowboys player on it. It's like if every truck that I see on the road has a star on the license plate or the back window. I mean, it's a big deal down here, and people hate Jerry. Man, the Cowboys fans hate Jerry. Nobody likes that man. it's just tough. It's been tough being a Cowboys fan for a long time. My heart goes out to you for like a little bit, but I'm also a Bears fan, and it's not like it's been better. It's probably been worse. So
Yeah, I'd rather win 10 games in the regular season and choke in the playoffs than win 3 or 4 games in the regular season. So my heart goes out to you,
yeah,
sir.
it's
Believe
what
me. I can take.
we're on like our fourth quarterback in like 10 years,
Yeah,
and they were all top picks. So I don't know. It. I'm excited. I'm gonna leave it at that. You're not excited, and I think that's the right move at this point. Or at some point, maybe you just like people have to start boycotting these games. It'll never happen, but
no, I'm
it
excited
should.
for football. I'm excited for football coming back. I'm excited for fantasy football.
Mhm.
And I'm excited to see the Cowboys play clean football. Maybe they
There you
don't
go.
win games, but if this team is causing penalties like they did last year, if we had forget about it.
I will say the one thing I'm
Under.
really excited for the Cowboys is to see how Mike Zimmer uses Micah Parsons because he might bring him back into like an off-ball linebacker kind of role more often too. So just to move
That's
him around would be really really cool.
That's what I've been hoping for that he was going to do with Dan Quinn. I think moving him to defensive end is limiting his skill set
Yeah.
because he's not like an Aiden Hutchinson type.
Hmm.
That's a big body like that. But if you can get him like more of a Demario Davis type who's doing delayed
Hmm.
blitzes and going against centers and guards, he didn't uh he didn't improve his pass rush that much by moving on to the line.
Yeah, no, and the thing is, he also can go on the line when you need him to. Like if it's a pass rush third down, put him on the line.
Which is great for
Yeah,
once in a while, sure. But to have
yeah,
that be his spot, I don't think that's the best for
yeah.
him.
I guess if there's one thing to be excited about, I guess it would kind of be that. And then, yeah, pay CD Lamb. I mean, if I was a betting man, I'd say Dak's probably not the quarterback next year, and you could probably get a haul for Dak.
Yeah,
Is the thing. So
probably. Yeah.
that's probably what it is.
I can do the Giants in 2 minutes here. Ready? Giants were a 6-win team last year. They still have Daniel Jones. I'm hammering the under. How about that? How's that for a breakdown?
That was 10 seconds. One
Thank
more
you.
thing on the Giants. I mean, it was the worst O-line maybe ever in the history of football last year. It was historically bad. And then they didn't make any improvements. It's the same.
Nope.
It's the same
I
thing.
do have to say the best thing the Giants did was bring in Brian Burns. I think he's a huge difference maker. He's going to be a problem that we're seeing him twice a year. I'm not looking forward to that, but that, like you said, the problems are all on offense, and Malik Neighbors doesn't matter when you have no quarterback and no
Yeah.
offensive line.
I think I think he's a really good piece. If you look at the Giants receiver room, it's actually not that bad. They're all running like 4 3s. So can anybody actually run a route? Hopefully Malik Neighbors can. I mean, I think he will be a very good receiver. I think he actually helps that receiver room a lot. But your receiver room doesn't matter if your quarterback's Daniel Jones and your guys can't block for more than 2.5 seconds. So I I have no expectations for this team. I honestly think that the D line is going to be average. I think Thibodeau got lucky last year with a lot of his sacks. Brian Burns makes him better, but I don't know. It's names, but there's no depth, and the defense is not going to be good. Your only hope is that Brian Dable knows what he's talking about. So I'm going to go under on the
Yeah,
Giants as well there with that 6.5. I feel like this might be one of the worst teams in the NFL, I guess, unless Daniel Jones is serviceable, which is a big ask.
that's a tough look when you're, what is it, $160 million quarterback is serviceable. That's not a good look.
No, not at all. And yeah, I still can't believe they gave him that much money, but he was pretty good at running that ball that one year.
Okay. Go ahead.
All right, so moving on to the Commanders here at 6.5. The number 2 pick in the draft, Jane Daniels, joining this Commanders team. New head coach Dan Quinn. You're very familiar with Mr. Dan Quinn. What are your early thoughts on them and their 6.5 win total?
I think of all 16 teams that we have talked about today, I think this team, this Washington team, is unquestionably the one who got better. They had
Okay.
a top to bottom revamp. They had a whole big dilemma with their ownership and all that.
Yep.
That's all sorted out. They have a
Mm-hmm.
new head coach to go with it. They have a new quarterback to go with it. They have one of my favorite players of all time, Bobby Wagner, coming in to reunite with Dan Quinn and lead that defense. So I'm really, really hot for the Commanders this year. I think they got a lot better, and I think they're going to surprise a lot of people. I think the Commanders are looking for something similar to what the Texans were able to do last year.
That's very big expectation. That's playoff expectations, because I guess the Texans set that bar so high. But yeah, I agree. I think what the biggest thing was getting the ownership done right. The Dan Quinn hire, I mean, I still think they might have been better off going with an offensive coach if they were bringing in a new quarterback, but it's not like there's a problem with Dan Quinn. He has head coaching experience. He was one of the reasons the defense for the Cowboys last year was so good. And like he brought a lot of those guys with him, like we talked about. Basically brought almost the whole defensive line with him.
Yep.
I guess to me, this offensive line is kind of a question mark. And now that Jahan Dotson's gone and it's official that Jahan Dotson just isn't a very good NFL player, who else is Jaden Daniels going to throw the ball to other than Terry McLaurin? And I feel like that's going to be a big thing because it's not like he's going to be in Bryce's spot because Terry's better than anyone that Bryce had. But there's just not a lot there. I think it's Luke McCaffrey, might be wide receiver 2, which that's a third round pick that I don't necessarily know if I believe in him as much as I would somebody else. So can Jaden look like an NFL quarterback without a lot of receivers? I think is a big question for me. I think just him looking good would be all you really want as a Commanders fan. You could win 2 games, but if they're all close and Jaden Daniels looks like he's a good quarterback, I think you would be fine with the season, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I can get behind that. Maybe they don't take the maybe they don't have the best offensive weapons and everything, but I do think they're going to be much better off than where they were last year. I think it's going to be it's going to be a lot tighter in games for them. This is a team like the Bears who have a young quarterback, obviously a rookie that I think they're going to be trending in the right direction with all the moves that they and Dan Quinn have made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's not like I'm saying that the Commanders are going to be absolutely horrible. I think if they were,
Sure.
I don't know if it would necessarily surprise anybody. If they were really good, also, I don't necessarily know if it would surprise anybody. It's just basically like, is Jaden Daniels as good as advertised, pretty much? Because he was one of the most fun players to watch in college last year. I mean, that's the reason he won the Heisman. I mean, he's an exciting player. And I guess if nothing else, if you're a Commanders fan, this is probably the first time you've been excited in a really, really long time. Like
Absolutely.
you have a quarterback, you have a coach, you don't got to worry about ownership just being the worst anymore. So it's if nothing else, you're finally going in the right direction. It's going to be a process, I would say. I'm not going to go full on trust the process, Joel Embiid. It's this Philadelphia 76ers kind of thing. But I think win totals don't necessarily have to be your expectation this year. It's, does Jaden Daniels look like an NFL quarterback, and can Dan Quinn prove that he can be an NFL head coach again?
Yeah, I do think they take that next step. I feel really comfortable giving them the over. I thought their line was kind of low for all the improvements that they made. Yeah.
I think I'm going to go under, mostly just because it's a lot of young talent and it's a lot of players you're betting on that haven't necessarily been there before. And then it's just this Dan Quinn defense might take a year or 2 to kind of figure out because his personnel isn't there yet. And usually with those defensive coaches, it takes a sec because they don't really change the way they play defense. They change the players, and that takes time.
Sure.
So I think that's what we got. Do you have anything else for the Commanders, NFC East, before we pick a division winner?
Yeah, I feel really comfortable picking the Eagles as the division winner, because for the reasons that we've talked about previously. This is also a division where it's a different winner every year. I think for the past 20 some odd years, there's been no repeat division winners. I just don't think that anybody's good enough to contend with the Eagles on the divisional level.
I would agree with you. I think that they got better. They got younger, like we talked about a little bit with the Eagles. I think the Eagles, they probably won't win the number 1 overall seed. I think they'll be in contention. I think the Eagles will be a top 3 seed, though. Not that that's a safe bet, but I think that that's their expectations and where their roster level and their roster construction is at. So with that, basically, who are the teams that you could realistically see representing the NFC in the Super Bowl this year? Like, what's your list of teams? How many do you have?
So I think the big 3 that we've established at this point are the 49ers, the Lions, and the Eagles. If we look past that a little bit deeper, I think you really have to look at the Packers and the Rams, who were playoff teams last year. I think they could very realistically make that next step and be in the championship game and possibly face the Chiefs in February. And then if I had to pick really dark horses, I'm looking at Atlanta, like you were talking about. If Kirk Cousins can stay healthy and everything works over there, they have quite a roster. And then, man, I'll say it just to pat you on the back, buddy. I think the Chicago Bears could be the media darlings and take over if they go on a winning streak late in the season. A lot of people are going to be talking about the Bears.
Yeah. I think you nailed all of them. The one that I was going to bring up was the Bears. Because I was like, sneaky, if everything went right, like what if he's just the best rookie quarterback there's ever been? And the Bears are just fantastic. I'm going to say there's a non-zero chance that's the case. Is it a high chance? No, but it's a non-zero chance. Because there's been 4 quarterbacks ever to throw for 4,000 yards who were a rookie. And if Caleb Williams did it in his first year, he'd be the first one in Bears history. And I'm looking at that as a possibility this year. If he threw for 4,000 yards, that would be an incredible, incredible win for a Bears quarterback. Because like I said, like even Jake Cutler at his best never did it.
If he throws for 4,000 yards, you right now in his rookie season have to put him in conversation with the best Bears quarterbacks of all time.
That's pretty much what happened almost immediately.
Yeah, what is this?
It's a great list. It's not a great list of guys. So
it's a 60, 70-year-old franchise. For this guy as a rookie, like he really has a shot of being the best quarterback that they've ever had.
Yeah, but that's what Mahomes was really quick because the Chiefs were in a similar spot to us. I would say like the Chiefs had quarterback troubles for years and years and years, and then Mahomes showed up. So it seems like it just takes one guy to change your fate. Hopefully, this is our guy.
It really does. And I know we're talking about the NFC, and I don't have to go into the AFC at all. With all these good teams and all these great players, I really think this is a fight for second place.
Really? You think they're that good?
Buddy, for the past 2 years, I've said, like, when it all comes down to it, they have Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. And as long as those guys are together, the Chiefs are going to be my Super Bowl pick every year. And I've looked like a genius these past 2 years. So there's literally zero reason for me to change those predictions at this point. I would love to see somebody step up and compete, give them a hard time or something like that. But that pairing is just it's goated at this point. You have to say it.
I would like to see it as well. I'm not in Kansas City anymore. When I was there, it's just tough to be in Kansas when the Chiefs are good, especially as a non-Chiefs fan. They love it. And I mean, it would be hard not to love it, but I mean, at this point, the hate is at the same level that the Patriots are at their height, in my opinion. People hate
very much
Chiefs.
So. Yep,
and it's too much for people. Hopefully somebody else can do it. That would be great for me. That would be great for I think the NFL as a whole. It's not like they're ever going to lose viewers, but it would just maybe a little bit of parity. Let's just go ahead and throw into the NFC maybe just once. Maybe one of these 16 teams we're talking about can go ahead and get it done. It's been a while. But it's been the Eagles, right?
Yeah, I mean the Eagles
it was the Rams. The Rams. I don't know why I completely forgot about the Rams.
Yeah. The Rams won most recently, but I mean they didn't play the Chiefs there. So the last team to beat the Chiefs in the championship was Tom Brady's Bucks. So it's gonna be a tough task to beat the Chiefs for any of these 16 teams or for any of the 31 teams in my opinion.
Well, I mean that's what it is. That's what I got. I think for our put up or shut up, I mean you can just pick one. I mean they're all kind of interesting to me. The one I'm the most passionate about is the Saints. I think the Saints go heavily under.
What do we say? 7.5 or 8.5?
It's 7.5.
All right, I'll put up or shut up on the Saints. I got my boys in the bayou.
Saints. All right,
let's do it. Yeah,
it has been put up. So cool. That is what we got for you for your NFC preview. The AFC is previewed. The NFC is previewed. I think I'm going to do a fantasy football preview next week. So you're going to have all of your bases covered, and then you're ready for football. You're ready for football to start in like a week and a half.
Something like that, man. I'm ready for it.
That is music to my ears, music to everyone's ears who's an NFL fan this time of year. Anything else, Theo, before we close this off?
No, I mean I'm excited for football to come back. I'm more excited for fantasy football and the Chicago Bears than I am for the Cowboys, which is, it's tough for me to say, but I've had a really good run of having a lot of good teams and good players over these past few years. So I think it's to have a down year, or what I, as a realistic Cowboys fan, I'm calling a rebuilding year, or probably a tanking year. And then next year would be the rebuild. I don't know. I was really looking for Bill Belichick to join the team this year. That would have made me feel a lot better, but we don't have that. So
the good news is I think you can get it next year, but you're gonna have a whole different team, and he might not want to do a rebuild. But the Cowboys are different. The Cowboys are a different kind of thing. All right.
yeah.
So that's what we got for you. As always, best roast gets $5. Thanks for watching.